Will Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom return after Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars? Who will be the next X-Men lineup in the MCU's Mutant Saga? What the hell is going on in Peacemaker Episode 6 with that huge Earth X reveal? And did James Gunn just give us a major clue as to who will be playing his DCU Batman? Those are just some of your burning questions that I've selected for this week's edition of Ask Colton. Hey everybody, Colton here, and this is the mailbag style show where I take your questions about Marvel, Star Wars, DC, movies and streaming in general. Whatever you want to ask, send it in at the email address askcoltonnow@gmail.com, link in the description below, and maybe you'll see your question featured right here on the show. All right, our first question comes to us from Momo Momo. Hello, I hope you're well. Thank you, I am well. Hope you're well as well. Is there any chance that Doom will continue after Secret Wars? Question by a French fan. All right, thanks so much for the question. And we also got a similar question from Jason Ford, who was curious about the possibility of Cillian Murphy playing Doctor Doom after Secret Wars. So I'm going to answer both questions in one answer. So, will Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom continue after Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars? Well, to answer that question, let's first start with just the Doctor Doom portion, and then we'll focus on the RDJ portion of the question. So, Doctor Doom, he is one of the greatest comic book villains of all time. And it's a shame that he hasn't had the best treatment on the big screen. I mean, I'm honestly shocked. Well, maybe shocked it would not be the right word, but I'm surprised. I'm disappointed. I'm curious as to why Fox, when they had the rights to Doctor Doom and they had the rights to Fantastic Four and the X-Men, I wonder why they didn't compete with Marvel Studios by putting together their own saga of sorts, with Doctor Doom serving as their Thanos and going up against the Fantastic Four and the various X-Men. Now, I know there were actually some plans to try to make that happen, but then Fanforstic bombed and they just kind of moved on from it. Anyway, Disney, they bought 20th Century Fox, and Doctor Doom is now home where he belongs under that Marvel banner, and naturally, Kevin Feige seems determined to deliver us a comic-accurate, menacing, tactical, terrifying, yet simultaneously demure Doctor Doom, and RDJ seems equally determined to do Victor Von Doom right. So, I have no doubt in my mind that despite Marvel's recent fumbles, I trust that they're going to deliver a very satisfying interpretation of Doctor Doom for Doomsday and Secret Wars. I think he could end up being the best on-screen comic book villain ever, beating out Thanos, Magneto, and even Defoe's Green Goblin. He could surpass them all. So after that happens, after they give us Doom done properly in these two giant event films, Doomsday and Secret Wars, the question becomes, do they then continue the character following those two huge events, following what Kevin Feige has described as a semi-reboot after Secret Wars, an in-universe reboot similar to the one that we got in the Secret Wars comics, where we see the universe essentially reset and various parallel universes combine into one? And my answer to that is, one, yes, of course, we will see Doctor Doom, the character, continue as not only just a character in the MCU, but as a villain. And here's the thing, after you have Doctor Doom as the villain of these two huge Avengers movies, and it having taken the Avengers, the X-Men, the Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and more, all to defeat him, then in order to reset and go back to basics, I think you have to take a little bit of a break from the character after those two huge events. So while I do think that Doctor Doom will be back, I don't think he's going to be back particularly soon. I think what you do is you have the character of Doom retreat for a while, have him operating in the background, maybe primarily focusing on running Latveria, pulling the strings maybe behind the scenes, and then we could learn toward the end of this next phase, or maybe in the second phase of this new saga, that Doom is back and causing trouble. I could totally see them going that route. Now, the question then becomes, is Robert Downey Jr. going to continue playing the character? Now, Kevin Feige has said that this reboot will allow for them to recast some of their characters, so that could leave the door, of course, open for a brand new actor to come in and play Doctor Doom, the new Doctor Doom that exists in this rebooted universe, and could be viewed as a very different character from the Doom that we see in Doomsday and Secret Wars. Now, I've heard many people suggest that this would be the real Doctor Doom, which implies that the Doctor Doom who oh my God, he shares the face with Tony Stark, and who is likely a variant with Tony Stark, they're pretty much implying that he isn't the real Doctor Doom. Now, I've always thought the argument that just because Doom and Tony Stark are variants in the MCU and how that somehow like diminishes the character of Doom, I've always found that to be a silly argument. You can do a comic accurate, true to form, full on Dr. Victor Von Doom, who is the character in every single way, and just also so happens to be a variant with Tony Stark. My favorite theory, if him being like a variant with Tony, is that Tony Starks only exist in universes where the Starks, Maria Stark, Howard Stark, where they lose their baby to a miscarriage and then they decide to adopt a baby from like a foreign country to cover up the fact that they lost their baby. And that foreign country could be Latveria, and they could raise this baby as Tony Stark. Whereas if that hadn't have happened, if they didn't adopt this Latvian baby, that baby still would have grown up, but under the name of Victor Von Doom. So I personally do not support a recasting of Doctor Doom from RDJ to another actor if the reason is, oh, we need the real Doctor Doom. I think that's ridiculous. But I do support recasting Doctor Doom and many characters after Secret Wars if they have like long-term plans for this post-Secret Wars, various assortment of characters, especially Doctor Doom. And maybe those actors, or Robert Downey Jr. in particular for Doctor Doom, maybe he doesn't want to commit to playing this character for another 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, he is 60 years old. So if they are like eventually going to have to recast the character, say in like the next 10 years anyway, because RDJ will be at 70 and maybe ready to retire, then maybe it would be best to just go ahead and recast the character after Secret Wars. And by the time Secret Wars comes out, geez, that'll be what, it comes out in 2027. So that's, adding even more time to it. So if they're going to like have to recast Doom a few years after Secret Wars anyway, because he's ready to move on, RDJ, then maybe that would just be the time to go ahead and do it. But, big but, if he is interested in remaining on as the character, I say you keep him. I personally would love to see RDJ continue to play Doom in these movies for the next, I don't know, he could do it probably for the next 15 years if he wanted to. I mean, Doom's always behind his mask, or at least he's supposed to be. So if Robert got to the point, Robert, we're pals. If RDJ got to the point where he couldn't like physically do like the necessary stunts and stuff, well, you could just have a stunt double do it. You could have somebody fill in and do a lot of that, moving around and stuff and like fight scenes and whatnot, and then have RDJ just do like the voiceover work and maybe the more, just kind of like standing around talking and waving his fist type things. And you could also maybe even do like what he did for Iron Man, where they basically just had him sit in front of a green screen and we got what his face looked like from inside his Iron Man mask. You could do that with Doctor Doom as well. So there are ways around it to keep RDJ playing the character, even if he gets kind of up there in age and what he can do becomes limited. And I mean, RDJ seems like a relatively healthy guy. He's 60, and we've got Ian McKellen, who is like knocking on 90. I think he's like 86, and he's coming back to play Magneto. So, I mean, why the hell not? Victor Von Doom is a character who, what's really cool about him is he's just kind of there. He's like this ever lingering threat. He's not like a mwahaha villain that you defeat and he's gone. He's always around, sometimes as a villain, sometimes as an ally. And I think it'd be neat if in this new Marvel Cinematic Universe, where all the characters are there, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, I think it'd be cool to just have an operating Latveria, and we know that Doom is there sitting on his throne, running his country, and that he could always come up as a threat or even an ally if, someone attacks Earth. I really love the idea of the Avengers having to like travel to Latveria and go to Doom's throne and like ask him for help in like fighting Apocalypse or something like that. That would be dope. And here's the thing, RDJ and Chris Evans as well, they are such key pieces to the MCU. They are like the two key pillars of this franchise. So if they're interested in staying on and being like reoccurring characters in the MCU, I say, hey, keep them around. And I think having him play Doctor Doom instead of Iron Man might be an even better solution to keeping him in the universe and just knowing he's there, but maybe he's not in like a ton of movies. He just pops up every once in a while. So if he's interested in continuing playing the character, I say keep him on. And then instead you could recast Tony Stark, recast Iron Man with a newer, like a younger, I should say, a younger actor like Kieran Culkin. Kieran Culkin, I think, would be a great Tony Stark. And hey, by the way, talking about Doctor Doom and Iron Man, be sure to check out our Iron Man and Doctor Doom pointing meme shirt that my wife designed for us here on the channel. Link in the description below. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts and theories down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for those 2 questions. All right, next we have a question from Matthew Gray. Matthew writes, did you see James Gunn has a big movie star who wants the Batman role in the DCU? Who do you think he's talking about? All right, yes, I did see that. Thanks so much for the question. Breaking news, I know. Big movie star wants to play Batman. Shocking, right? No, but Gunn did come out and say that there are several people who are interested in the role, and that one of them is a particularly well-known movie star. Gunn didn't say that that's who he's leaning toward. He's not sure who he's going to go with, but he was like making the point that there are like several people who are interested. There are several people that he has in mind that very well like may not end up being Batman. And he even gave the example of having had people in mind for Superman, but then he ended up going with David Cornsweet. So I think he's saying he's really open to who he picks, and he probably wants to have like a strenuous audition process. Now, my guess for who he's talking about, and this isn't just my guess, many are having the exact same thought, that the big movie star he's talking about is likely Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal has been in the running for Batman going all the way back to like the early 2000s with Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. It's been reported that Gyllenhaal was considered for the role before they like settled on Christian Bale. It's also been reported that Gyllenhaal was considered for the role in the DCEU when Ben Affleck was looking to step down from Batman. And apparently, Matt Reeves, director of The Batman, also met with Gyllenhaal early on in development after Ben Affleck had already dropped out and before Matt Reeves had decided to go younger with his version of Batman. And that's when he, of course, cast Robert Pattinson. And yes, if you didn't know, Matt Reeves, his The Batman, it was originally a very different movie that mutated from a Ben Affleck written and directed film that was also going to be called The Batman, with him starring as the Bat as well as writing and directing. And then that turned into him just starring as Batman and Matt Reeves coming in to direct. And then eventually Ben Affleck was just completely out, and Matt Reeves ended up doing his complete like own thing separate from the DCEU, new Batman, new everything. And it's probably like it's very well the case that it is totally the case that they always knew that Ben Affleck was not going to be a part of the Batman once Matt Reeves came in. Like that ship had sailed. He was already like saying I'm out. But I think it's clear that Warner Brothers asked him not to say that he was no longer going to be Batman at that time because they had the Justice League coming out and they didn't want Ben Affleck saying, "Yeah, I'm not Batman anymore," before their big Justice League movie came out. So anyway, little history for you there. Now, in Hollywood, this is actually really common for like an actor to be up for a role, not get it, and then when the role comes back around, them to like almost get it again or actually get the role. Henry Cavill was almost Superman in Superman Returns, but he lost out on the role to Brandon Routh. But then when the opportunity came back around, Henry Cavill did end up getting the role for Man of Steel. Now, Gyllenhaal, he is a guy who has not only been a Batman contender, but he was also almost Spider-Man in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 when it looked like Tobey Maguire may not return to the role. So, what are my thoughts on Gyllenhaal playing Batman? It would be fucking awesome. He's a very talented actor. He's one of the best. I mean, he's one of the greats. Like current working actors today, Gyllenhaal's one of the best. And I think he's got the look, both for Batman and Bruce Wayne. We know he can bulk up. He's 44. So I mean, I think he's like the perfect age for the brave and the bold style Batman that James Gunn is going for. We know Batman is supposed to have like a teenage son, so he's supposed to be a little older than Superman, but not like super old, just like a 10-year, gap between the two. We also know that in the DCU, which was confirmed by Creature Commandos, that Batman has been around for at least 15 years prior to like the modern day DCU. So again, that lines up with what Gyllenhaal could bring to the role. So if they do announce him as the DCU Batman, I think that would be great. My only concern is I do kind of like the idea of a lesser known actor playing the DCU Batman so that Batman is the focus, not the big name playing him. But really, that's just me playing devil's advocate. I mean, Ben Affleck, Christian Bale, Michael Keaton, they were all big names who have played Batman. So I really don't see an issue with casting a big name. I like Gyllenhaal. I think honestly, he'd be like maybe my number one pick. Jensen Ackles would also be another great option, though. I do have faith that whoever they end up casting, it will be perfect casting because James Gunn never misses when it comes to casting. He is a phenomenal writer, great director, just a great filmmaker overall. But I would say the number one thing that he is good at is casting. He never misses with casting, and he always makes sure to have this great relationship with his cast. And he's also pretty notorious for recasting characters if the actor that he had chosen just isn't working out and delivering what he had envisioned, such as with Vigilante in Peacemaker Season 1 and Michael Rooker's character in Peacemaker Season 2. He was originally played by another guy. So, in the midst of production, when he was getting dailies, Gunn realized, okay, that's not what I was going for. I'm going to bring in someone else. Now, for something like Batman, they're going to do a lot of screen testing, read throughs, film and edit entire scenes in costume, chemistry tests. So Gunn will know for certain that he's got the right guy before he pulls the trigger on an official casting for a huge character like Batman. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this down in the comments below. Would you like Gyllenhaal as Batman? Did you have another big movie star actor in mind? Did you have a smaller name in mind that maybe we haven't heard of? Let me know down in the comments below. Or hey, maybe you're holding out hope that Robert Pattinson will play the DCU Batman. All right. Next, this one comes to us from Gary Beadle. With the new X-Men movie only a few short years away and casting announcements probably not too far away, who would be your choice for the core lineup, including villains and the actors to play them? All right, well, thanks so much for that question, Gary. So there's a lot of talk of what the post-Secret Wars MCU will look like, especially in regards to the X-Men. Marvel Studios' first ever crack at an in-house X-Men film will be one of their first films of the MCU's next saga, a saga that will likely be called the Mutant Saga. And that is very exciting because the X-Men stories are arguably the richest character driven stories that Marvel Comics has ever published. And the found family, coming of age nature of those stories make for not only great movies, but great episodic style movies. I cannot wait to see a story that will span a decade plus of storytelling like that of the Infinity Saga. And the key, I think, to recapturing the magic of that Infinity Saga is to get the characters right, do them justice, and tell great character driven stories. Tony, Steve, Natasha, Clint, Thor, Bruce, Loki, Sam, Bucky, and others who encompassed that first saga, they were the found family aspect of that saga that made audiences so invested. And that's unfortunately something that the multiverse saga it's been missing until Thunderbolts, that is, arguably the Multiverse Saga's best movie yet. And again, it really dove into the importance of characters, and I'm sorry to say it again, but found family. And Thunderbolts director, Jake Schreier, he is confirmed to be the director of the MCU's X-Men. So, what does this mean as far as casting? Which characters are we going to see in the new lineup? Villains too? And who will play them? Well, we know that Avengers Doomsday will be featuring the return of the OG X-Men cast from those early 2000s Fox X-Men movies. So far, we've got Patrick Stewart's Professor X, Ian McKellen's Magneto, Rebecca Romijn's Mystique, James Marston's Cyclops, Alan Cummings' Nightcrawler, and Kelsey Grammer's Beast. Oh, and even Channing Tatum's Gambit, who, yes, was awesome in Deadpool and Wolverine. And there are probably many, many more to come, like Halle Berry's Storm. And I can promise you, without a shadow of a doubt, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine will be there too. So, if you're bringing back all of these OGs in Doomsday, does that then mean that we can expect to see them continue on after Avengers Secret Wars in that rebooted, like semi rebooted reality? Yes and no. Some of these original X Men characters will continue in the new MCU in the Mutant Saga, but Many of them will not. So let's run down who's staying and who's going post Secret Wars, and I'll explain how the MCU reboot in Secret Wars is going to make all of this happen. So Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, they're both in their 80s, knocking on 90. I think we can safely assume that Doomsday and probably Secret Wars will be the last time that we see them as these characters. And I mean, bravo to what will be a 3 decade spanning career as these two iconic characters. But yes, we will see, I think, two new actors as Professor X and Magneto, or will we? Should I perhaps not say new? While I'm pretty confident in saying that, yeah, Stewart and McKellen, they'll be done. I do think the perfect casting for the new MCU versions would be the two guys who've already played them before, James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. They were brilliant in these roles. They're both in their late 40s, the perfect ages for a fresh start with the X-Men, but not a full-on retelling of their origin story. They also bring a sense of familiarity and a connection to that old era of the X-Men and Stewart and McKellen's versions of the characters as well. We could also then view films like X-Men First Class and the others as vague histories that aren't necessarily canon, but they can still work as vague histories that give us the general understanding of who these characters are. And what I mean when I say vague history is we know we're going to get that in universe semi reboot in Avengers Secret Wars, right? Just like in the Secret Wars comics, where reality and the universe itself is rewritten. And Kevin Feige, he's been clear that this will allow for some of their characters to remain the same as far as casting, but this will also give them an in universe rewriting of reality excuse that they can use as an opportunity to reset and recast some key characters while simultaneously keeping a piece of the past and everything that they've built. It really is a smart way to do it, and it's kind of what James Gunn has also done with the DCU. Yes, it's a brand new universe and he's starting something new, but he's not just throwing away everything that came before, like his great Peacemaker show, the Suicide Squad, other, Blue Beetle, and things that he liked from the previous DCEU. He's not shackling himself to this, oh, well, I can't include any of that. I have to recast. No, he's not abiding by any like arbitrary rule. And I think the same will be true for the MCU. I think McAvoy and Fassbender would most importantly be phenomenal as these characters. We have evidence of that fact. But they would also be a great example of pieces of that old era of Marvel remaining in this new era, but they would also be great examples of having pieces of that old era of Marvel remaining in this new era that is simultaneously just beginning. Now, as far as the team of X-Men go, rumor has it they are looking to go young, and I completely agree that that's the direction they should go. I think you definitely cast a brand new Cyclops, Jean Grey, Rogue, Nightcrawler, Storm, Iceman, Angel, etc. Now, some names that come to mind for me are Jacob Tremblay as Cyclops. I like Margaret Qualley as Rogue. I think Sophia Lillis would be a great Jean Grey. I know that's just me picking a redhead, but seriously, I do think that she would be a great Jean Grey. She's awesome in those It movies. And the most important thing, I think, is that they put together a team that really work well together in terms of actor chemistry. So I hope that they take their time and build the perfect cast, one that can play these characters for the next, I don't know, 15, 20 years. Now, I did kind of brush over when talking about Magneto and Professor X, I brushed over Hank McCoy, Beast. And, he's supposed to be a peer of Charles and Magneto. So you could maybe have Nicholas Holt reprise the role. Granted, he is busy playing Lex Luthor right now. So I think what they will probably do and probably should do is just keep the character, the big CG version that we saw in the Marvels, and you could have Kelsey Grammer continue to voice the character. Why not? So then you have Wolverine, and I think it would be criminal to recast Wolverine if, big if Hugh Jackman is still interested in playing the character for a while. If he has changed his mind and he wants to play Wolverine more after Secret Wars, same with Downey as Doom. If Downey wants to stick around, you let Downey stick around. If Jackman wants to stick around, you let Jackman stick around. Let him keep doing it. And I have a few reasons as to why I think that they need to do that, and they aren't just because I love Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, though I totally do. I I think that keeping Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, I think if you keep Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, what you do is you keep him relatively separate from those mainline X-Men films. For too long, the X-Men films have leaned way too heavily on the character of Wolverine. I think the X-Men would thrive by giving some limelight to their other great characters that aren't called Wolverine. So by keeping Jackman on, you can do more films with like him and Deadpool and have Wolverine perhaps even lead his own film, do Old Man Logan, and keep them in their own like little pocket of the MCU where they can do fun R-rated, maybe X-Force style movies. And keeping Hugh Jackman can make it to where Wolverine can be more of a peer to, Professor X and Hank and Magneto rather than just a student. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a Wolverine on this X-Men team. I think we totally still have a Wolverine in this new lineup, but her name is X-23. And while her dad is off going on missions with Deadpool and saving baby Hulks, he encourages his daughter to attend Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. And Daphne Keene is the perfect age to fit right in with this new young cast of X-Men characters. She is so good as Laura, aka X-23. We saw her come back in Deadpool and Wolverine, and I want to get to see her explore that character and play the role for years to come. Then we can still have the Hugh Jackman Wolverine show up from time to time in those X-Men movies to check in on or join the team in like their big culmination Avengers style films where they go up against Apocalypse. And yeah, I do think that they're going to do Age of Apocalypse for the Mutant Saga, but like 10 years down the road, like for their version of what will be Infinity War. But hey, those are just my thoughts. I think that you keep Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I think you keep McAvoy and Fassbender. You could even keep Kelsey Grammer as those characters. But as for the rest, I think it's time to do a recast. You bring in a young, new set of characters. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours down in the comments below. Thanks so much for the question. All right, next we have a question from Bobcat that kind of connects to the previous question we just discussed. Will the X-Men in Avengers Doomsday be the same variants of X-Men that we saw in the original X-Men trilogy, X-Men, X2, X-Men The Last Stand? Or are they new variants that are very similar? For example, the Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine being very similar to the variant from the Fox X-Men films. All right, really great question. So we know that the original cast from the Fox era, or the early 2000s X-Men, they are returning for Avengers Doomsday. Kevin Feige has even referred to them as the original X-Men. Now, to clarify your question for anyone who's confused, you used a great example of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine in Deadpool and Wolverine. Yes, it's Hugh Jackman. Yes, he has a very similar personality and history to the Wolverine that Jackman has played in those X-Men films, but he is just a similar variant from another universe who had a slightly different, or in some cases, a very different life than the Wolverine we know. Like in Multiverse of Madness, for example, where we saw Patrick Stewart's Professor X, but not the Professor X that we know from those X-Men films. He's just a very similar variant. So the question is, will that be the case for the X-Men that we are getting in Doomsday? Will they be the exact same X-Men that we know from those movies, or will they be very similar variants of the characters? And the answer is both. Let's start with the X-Men universe that those original X-Men came from. That is universe 10005. That was the universe number designation for those Fox era X-Men films, and it is the universe number in Deadpool and Wolverine where we get confirmation that yes, Deadpool exists in that same 10005 universe, the same universe as the Fox X-Men. Now, something we have to remember about that universe, the 1005 Fox X-Men universe, is that when it comes to its timelines, it's messy as hell. We have seen the timeline rewritten in universe many times, such as in Days of Future Past and in Deadpool 2. Professor X has died like 3 times. We've had very different versions of Colossus. Super messy. But all of those altering different timelines occur in that same universe. Now, how does that work? Well, as I've explained before, you can have multiple flows of time, multiple timelines with, variations to how reality unfolds. You can have multiple strands of that time exist in one universe. And that is basically confirmed here on the TVA screen in Deadpool and Wolverine, where we see Deadpool's universe and how it's dying. And there are these other timelines that are attached to his universe. And as that universe retreats and dies, we also see those timelines die. And that is because all of those timelines are part of that one universe.
This is your universe, Mr. Wilson. That, see how it decays from the inside?
And before the Fox X-Men films even became part of the MCU multiverse, like officially, the director of Logan, James Mangold, he had suggested that that movie, Logan, was kind of an Elseworld story of its own, and that it takes place in an alternate timeline where the X-Men films that came before are canon, but loosely canon. They're a loose history, but not like a 100% we have to abide by those previous films. That's the first step, I think, to answering your question. Universe 1005 is the Fox X-Men universe, and all of the Fox X-Men movies are part of that universe. The timeline has just been rewritten like recordings over and over again on a VHS tape, and there are variant timelines that exist in that one universe. I hope that makes sense. So that then brings us to the question, which X-Men universe are we going to see in Doomsday? Well, I think that we can reasonably assume that we will be going to the same universe that Monica Rambeau wound up in at the end of the Marvels, where we saw the return of Kelsey Grammer's Beast. Granted, he looks very different. I think we can also assume that the X-Men universe that we'll be seeing in Doomsday will also be Deadpool's universe, because of course he's going to be part of the story of Doomsday and the story of Secret Wars. And we know Deadpool's universe is Universe 1005, the Fox X-Men universe. And I don't think that Doomsday is going to give us multiple X-Men universes. I think we just get one, and it's going to be that universe. And that therefore means that Monica is in that Fox X-Men universe. So to answer your question, yes, they are the same X-Men from those X-Men movies. They are from that universe, and they aren't just like variant versions from another universe. They are the original Fox X-Men. But, big asterisks, they will be slightly different, and they'll likely have a looser history that's very, very similar to the one we know. But also, there will be some differences because of all the time travel and rewriting that has happened in their universe. And that also gives Kevin Feige and the Russo brothers the creative liberty and freedom to do different things with these characters and not have to abide by this like strict, oh, well, this happened in that movie, so we have to, pay attention to that and we can't retcon this or that. It can just all be explained by, oh, well, this is a slightly different timeline or time has been slightly changed. For all intents and purposes, yes, they are the same. Same actors, same characters, same general history, and they are meant to be the same X-Men from those original movies. They aren't from other universes like the new Wolverine was, or Professor X in Universe 838 from Multiverse of Madness. That's not the case with these X-Men. And I don't know if I'm going to keep this in, but what's really annoying about that? We should have two Wolverines in the 1005 universe, because Wolverine, that new Wolverine, he comes back to Deadpool's universe, 10005, the main Fox X-Men universe, and he's there with Deadpool. But Logan dies in the future, so Deadpool's universe should still have another Wolverine who's part of that X-Men team. That's a video for another day. All right. Thanks so much for the question. All right. Next, we have a question from, I am excited to talk about this one. We have a question from Jonathan Daniel Reyes. Hey, sir. One question I would like answered, or maybe something you can address, is what the heck do we think is going to happen with the last 3 episodes of Peacemaker? Who do we think will cameo? How do we think it will connect to the overall theme of the DCU? There's so much to cover, but I think it would be great as it's coming up next week. All right. So obviously, this was sent in before last night's episode, or at the time I'm recording this, it was last night's episode of Peacemaker aired, episode 6. But this is a great excuse to talk about the episode and still answer a good chunk of your question. So I just realized my prompter says a good chipmunk of your question. Okay. Peacemaker, episode 6. Ignorance is Chris. It was insane. We got confirmation that this reality is indeed a reality where everyone is there. Well, not everyone, most are racist pieces of shit Nazis. And, this was the theory going on after many had noticed the lack of any people of color in the background in various scenes that took place in that other universe. And with White Dragon, of course, in that universe being like a hero. Turns out he's only this nice, fun-loving hero because he's finally got his trashy piece of shit wish of what he would call a white utopia. And man, this episode, while hilarious, it was eerie as fuck. And it had me on the edge of my seat and quite frankly, feeling a little sick. I mean, that face strip selfie moment at the beginning of the episode, it really set the tone, this unsettling tone for the rest of the episode, and I think really for the rest of the season. And I love that James Gunn is having the balls to go there with this story. So what is this world? Well, yeah, it's basically Earth X from the comics, a world where the Nazis won World War II and the United States appears to be like a faction of the Nazi regime, and they're all white supremacists. And it's that evil lying under. And what makes it so creepy is yes, Nazis bad, but it's that there is that evil lying under this facade of happy and kind faces and oh, everything's great. Not really. Don't look under the don't look under the sheet. Under the sheet. Oh, God. Uh, Anyway, my good friend Lee, who I work with over at Screen Crush, said that when Adebayo was about to go on that walk, outside of Chris's mansion, that he felt like Walter White in the back of the SUV screaming for her not to do it. And yeah, same. But you know, that scene, it was just done so well. And like that white lady driving her car and Adebayo waving, and then the white lady looking at her like, like terrified. So well done, so eerie. And then when Keith drives by and slams on his brakes, jumps out of his truck and yells, "One got out, a black." Oh my fucking God. Do you know what that has to mean? One got out? That means that in this universe, they've not eradicated all non-white people, which would be extremely disturbing in its own right. They have them in fucking camps. There is no greater villain than a Nazi. So, while this is certainly disturbing and hits a little close to home, it really is bringing forth the ultimate conflict of good and evil. And I'm excited to see Peacemaker hopefully redeem himself fully of, like any questionable past that he may have had and just absolutely obliterate this Nazi regime over on this other Earth. But come on, Chris. You didn't notice that there were only white people walking around. I guess ignorance really is Chris. But I can't wait to learn more about the freedom fighters that are in this universe. And God, I just hope, I hope and I pray that GI Robot is on that team of freedom fighters, or that he is brought in by Argus into this other universe, and that we just get to see him slaughter Nazis. Would you like to slaughter Nazis with GI Robot? I need that right now. I think America needs that right now. We just need live action GI Robot tearing through Nazis. That would be very good to see. Now, it was also in this episode that we got Lex Luthor. Very cool seeing him in another project and really making this universe feel connected, bringing together the whole portal thing and probably setting us up for like a mother box dark side centric culmination event. This show, it's just so good, and I can't wait for these last two episodes. So thanks so much for that question, giving me an excuse to talk about Peacemaker. So good. All right, next we've got a question from Justin Huber. Colton, what Star Wars movie are you more excited about, Starfighter or Mando and Grogu? I really miss the days when Mando was the main focus instead of Grogu. Oh. I'm so ready for the new transition of leadership to happen at Lucasfilm. Also, what Star Wars characters from the EU would you like to see get their live action treatment? All right, great question. Um, Hard to say which one I'm more excited for. I will say that yes, while Kathleen Kennedy, I'm not on this, oh, Kathleen Kennedy's horrible bandwagon. She's one of the best Hollywood producers ever. Produced a lot of Steven Spielberg stuff, a lot of George Lucas's stuff. George Lucas handpicked her. So I'm not a Kathleen Kennedy hater. However, I think it's clear that running Lucasfilm hasn't been her strong suit. I do agree that it's time to move on, and get new leadership. Granted, she's done a lot of good stuff. You can't blame her for all the bad stuff and not give her credit for all the good stuff. You got to give her credit for Force Awakens, Rogue One, the Mandalorian series, Andor. You got to give her credit for all the good stuff too. So, as far as which one I'm more excited for, look, it's no secret that I was disappointed by the trailer for Mandalorian and Grogu. I hate the title. I think it's a silly title. It's very just, this is what it is, which I guess, that's good in some instances, like Batman v Superman. Yeah, that's what you title that movie. But Mandalorian and Grogu, I don't know. I think a better title would have been like Star Wars, This is the Way. I just think that's a better title. But anyway, title doesn't matter. The trailer, it looks like a trailer for a Disney Plus show. It doesn't look like a movie. And it was just disappointing all around, I think. And, I say that as a massive fan of the Mandalorian series. I love me some Grogu. I like Grogu being like just as much of a focus as Mandalorian or as Din Djarin. And I really hate that Disney has kind of fumbled the one really good thing, or I shouldn't say the one, Andor is also great, but their most successful thing that Star Wars has had going right now and is kind of like universally beloved by all the fans, even the shitty fans. They all have like an admiration for The Mandalorian. So I want to be clear that I do say all of this as a guy who is more of an optimistic Star Wars fan. I mean, to quote my friend Ryan, I'm an easy lay when it comes to Star Wars. I love the shit, good, bad, and ugly. And I tend to like Star Wars more than I dislike it. But one of my biggest complaints is this asinine decision that they keep making where they have shows turned into movies, things that should be shows turned into movies, and things that should be movies turned into shows. The Kenobi series should have been a movie, a trilogy of movies, in fact. Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader for the rematch of the century, that needs to be on the big screen. But they just gave us a subpar Disney Plus show, so that you can barely see because it was so poorly lit. And then now they're taking their most successful show, The Mandalorian, and they're turning it into a fucking movie. This show got way too entrenched, I think, in the wider Star Wars universe. This show lost sight of what made that show so great. It's cool that they brought in Luke, and I guess it makes sense that they brought in Luke and Ahsoka, but honestly, I think it was a mistake. This series should have been about the Mandalorian and Grogu going on adventure after adventure. And while season 3 was disappointing, the end of that season actually had me optimistic that that's what they were going to do. They were going to have, this refocus on Mandalorian and Grogu. Grogu would be learning to become a Mandalorian himself. But now they're doing a movie instead of a season 4. And, I hope it's great. I'm sure it'll be cute and funny and exciting. Maybe I'll love it, but I do hate that it looks like a show and not a feature film. And I'm kind of rambling and ranting. To answer your question, which am I more excited for, Mandalorian and Grogu or Starfighter? I don't know. I'm excited about both for different reasons. I'm, you know, uh, simultaneously somewhat anxious about both for various reasons. I guess I'm a little more intrigued by Starfighter because I know so little about it. So take that for what it's worth. As far as Legends characters coming into the live action, Mara Jade, man, I think they need to do another trilogy of movies with Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie, R2, 3PO, young Ben Solo, all with younger actors, not deepfake bullshit, just, traditional recast. Bring back Aaron Wright if you want as Han Solo. And you can have that relationship there between Luke Skywalker and Mara Jade. Uh, I think that'd be dope. So yeah, that's my answer. I'd like to see Mara Jade. All right, thanks for the question. Next, we have a question from Lubangs. Sorry. Now that the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Guardians, and Avengers are all in the same cinematic universe after Secret Wars, Will the big team up movies consisting of characters from all the teams still be called Avengers? Will Disney stick with what works, or will we get an Ultimate Alliance type of title in the future? All right, that is a great question, man, because, you know, for a long time, I thought the next big movie that they would do, like before they announced Secret Wars, I was thinking, well, they have to do Secret Wars. We were all thinking, they got to do Secret Wars, but I didn't think they would call it Avengers Secret Wars. I would think you just call it Marvel's Secret Wars because it's so much more than an Avengers movie when you have all those other teams and heroes that aren't Avengers. But you make a good point that the Avengers name, that name in itself, it has like an audience resonation. So I get why they keep it there. And hey, maybe after Secret Wars and after the semi reboot, when the X-Men become the bigger focus of the overall MCU for the Mutant Saga, maybe that's when we will see them pivot from making Avengers the big crossover movie title, and maybe that's when we could expect to see them just start using titles like Marvel's Age of Apocalypse or something like that. And that's if they plan on, that movie being more than just an X-Men story. But including other heroes as well. I don't know that they use Ultimate Alliance. That's a great title for a video game. Not so much a movie. I don't think it's a great title for a movie, but we'll just have to see what they do. All right. Thanks so much for the question. Next, we've got a question from Akash Prathi. Hello, Colton. Do you think the Watcher from What If will show up in a movie during the multiverse saga, even in a small role? If so, where do you see him fitting in? All right, dude. I would love for the Watcher to show up in live action and of course portrayed by Jeffrey Wright. I thought he would be in Fantastic Four First Steps, and rumor has it he almost was. And they've just done so much with What If, and they've made the Watcher such an integral part to this whole multiverse saga thing that they've got cooking. So you would think that he would have to be brought in for Doomsday and Secret Wars. Like it would almost be like weird if he and like Captain Carter weren't part of Doomsday and Secret Wars. And I've said before that I think that the Watcher would actually be the perfect way to open Avengers Doomsday with a narration of what the hell is going on, which would be very beneficial for those who haven't kept up with everything, or for those who have kept up with everything and just can't fucking remember all of it because there's just been so much happening since Endgame. So I think you could have the Watcher in his traditional narration style open the film by explaining the multiverse. And how he watches over it, but can't intervene, and have him talk about what happened in Loki, talk about incursions. Maybe you can explain away Kang, talk about variants, explain all of that without making it feel like a big exposition dump because it's just a natural thing for the Watcher to do. He yaps about stuff. And this would also be an interesting way to not only recap everything that has happened since Endgame, but also give us Doom's origin story. Maybe even, have the Watcher get like this shiver up his spine as he becomes aware of the rise of Doctor Doom, the latest threat to the multiverse. I think that would be dope, be a cool way to open the film. And, maybe after Doom dethrones Loki, the Watcher could go to Loki, or Loki go to the Watcher, and they introduce themselves. Maybe Loki already like knew the Watcher because he had become nearly omnipotent sitting on the throne. And maybe we'll get to see the Watcher like tell Loki, "Hey, I've dealt with threats to the multiverse before, and I could never do it alone." And he could advise Loki to like put together a team to stop Doom. It'd be awesome, and a lot like that. I believe it was Ultimate Alliance, that video game, where like we actually saw the Watcher recruit characters like Spider-Man, Wolverine, Thor. Who else was in that game? There were a lot of people in that game. Anyway, he was like recruiting all the heroes to go fight against Doctor Doom, who had like gotten the power of Odin. So I think that'd be pretty cool to include the Watcher. All right, I'm tired. It's late. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for sending in questions. If you didn't see your question featured in this episode, do not worry. I'm very likely getting around to it. You guys have been very generous to send me lots of questions, and I just can't fit all of them into one episode. But I'm going to do my best to get to every question. Well, not every single question. Some of you are horrible at writing questions. Just kidding. Just kidding. You're all great at writing questions. No, but really, I do try to get to just about every question. And if I don't include the question on the actual show, just usually just for time, or whatever the case may be, or if I just don't have much interesting to say, that's usually the reason. You guys all write awesome questions, but sometimes I just don't have an awesome response. But nevertheless, I will definitely do my absolute best to respond to every single question via email if it doesn't make it on the show. All right. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified every time we upload a new video. And by the way, if you're watching this deep, I want to let you guys know because I had someone reach out and ask. The way this works is I do the whole show, and then throughout the week, I upload segments of the show throughout the week as their own videos. So if you see a video uploaded to the channel, it is very likely from that week's show. Now, sometimes if something drops, I'll do a special video, and that wasn't part of the show. So what I'm trying to do is figure out a way to make it clear to you guys, like, okay, here's the full show, and maybe through like the title or the thumbnail indicate, okay, this video, it's a segment from the full show. So if you already watched the full show, I don't want you to, start watching a segment or excited like, oh, hey, new video. And then you realize halfway through, like, oh, I've seen this. I don't want that to happen. That can be annoying. So I'm trying to figure out a way to make it clear, like, this is full show. This is segments of the show. This is its own video that was not part of the show. So you better watch it, So if you have any ideas on how to do that beyond just putting like, I don't know, clip in the title or something, which maybe that's the answer. I don't know. I don't know what to do. Thank you again for joining me. I will see you guys next time. And remember, submit your questions to AskColtonNow@gmail.com. Bye. Oh, fuck. Time to record after. One battle.